This is Transistor.fm.
Hey, product people. Kyle Fox is back this week to talk about what happened when they launched, the metrics they've used since then, and the lessons they learned along the way. If you're doing agile development and your tools are too complicated, you need to try Sprintly. I use it at work and love it. You can try it free at www.sprint.ly. Yeah. So how were you building this list? How did people hear about it?
So to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. We just built like I think our teaser page was kind of compelling. It was a pretty, to use the word, I don't know, I guess you could say as a sexy design. Like it had like a nice damask wallpaper. It was all like dark, and then it had a bright pink logo with a bright pink button, which I guess around that time was pretty different than a lot of things you'd see.
Okay.
And it was intentionally pretty mysterious and overly sensational. It was like, photojournal is going to change the way photographers blog or something, just like so over the top. And like, that's all it said. So I think the page itself was really compelling. And
how did people find the page?
So exactly. So at that time, there wasn't really Twitter or Facebook or anything like that. Man, that makes me feel old to say that. Like, back in my day, we didn't have the Twitters. We didn't have web browsers. But
so how did people hear about it if there was not that stuff?
So our friends Rob and Lauren, who we were building the blog for, they had a fairly good following on another blog they ran called The Wedding Travelers. So they shot a lot of Indian weddings and things like that, which Indian weddings make for some spectacular photography. So
yeah.
It was a pretty awesome blog, and they got a lot of readers. So they kind of were, alluding to the fact that this new thing was like being built kind of alongside with them as partners, sort of thing. So we got a lot of the initial traffic through them.
Interesting.
And beyond that, I don't really know, like how much of it was word of mouth and people sharing the link. I'm not sure. Like we didn't really have a lot of ways to track that setup. Mm-hmm. We didn't do any content marketing or blogging or anything like that. We basically put zero effort into promoting it, other than like sharing the link here and there. And I think it speaks to how powerful design can be. Like, I think if that page had, again, it was like my perfectionism. Like that teaser page was pretty nice as far as teaser pages go.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what helped boost. Like, I'm not sure what our traffic was like, but I bet you our conversion rate was pretty high. People hitting the page, I bet a lot of them signed up. Of course, in retrospect, I wish we had tracked that sort of thing. But the problem probably wasn't getting people to sign up. It was getting them to the page. And I think if we had known how to drive more traffic to the page, we probably would have had an even larger launch list.
So how big was the launch list when you did launch?
I think it was around, I think it was between 350 and 400 people.
Okay. So you launched was that your launch plan, was to send this email out?
Exactly. Yeah. And so what we did was, I think, it was kind of hokey the way we did it. So we launched in April of 2010, and I think in January of 2010 we picked, I can't remember, either 50 or 100 people to be beta testers.
Okay.
And we like sent them a link to sign up and create their account and everything. And I mean, we had no idea how to run a beta testing program. We're just like, oh, we'll just let people use it for a few months first, and then find any like big problems and then launch it. And the problem was because, like I said earlier, like the whole perfectionism thing. Yeah, so the beta testing phase was a bit hokey because pretty much we had ironed out all the bugs. It was kind of like we felt like it was almost ceremony because, you know, that's when everything was in beta. Beta was like the cool thing. So yeah, it was almost like a disclaimer, like, hey, this isn't totally finished yet. So if you run into big problems, don't blame us because it's just a beta. Yeah. So we ran this beta, and it was good. Like we got some decent feedback. Can you still hear me okay, by the way? Yeah. Okay. We got decent feedback. The one, I guess, talking about the beta 2, one thing that I would change or do differently, or say that we at least did wrong, was out of all these people, we basically gave them free Photojournal for Life accounts, which at the time was like, yeah, like they're doing us a huge favor by doing this beta testing. So we'll, you know, I think it speaks to how skewed our understanding of the value of our product was. Yeah. You know, it's like we'll give them Photojournal free for life because, well, it's not going to cost us anything. Like that's how we approached it. It was like a cost approach. Yeah. And in retrospect, I would like, betas are good. Like it's good to like bring on users as soon as you possibly can. But I would never like give free for life again. Yeah. Because really what we did was we picked, I think, like the first 50 or 100 people who signed up for our list. And really those people should be our most passionate customers. You know, like they were the ones who were like, Photojournal is like what I'm looking for. I can't wait to use it. You know, that sort of thing. Like we really kind of possibly cut out not only the revenue from like 50 to 100 customers. Yeah. But I think people value things differently when they're paying for them, and yeah, it may be more, you know, if you're paying the monthly fee for it, you might, you know, in your mind it might be higher value to you than it's like, oh, it's this thing I got free once, so I still use it because it's free. Yeah. And which has an effect on how I guess, you know, the more somebody values something, I guess the more likely they are to share it and like tell other people about it. If like, I'm using this awesome thing that they gave me 6 months free because I tested it out, but I'm still using it because it's awesome. Like, yeah. So yeah, I think of two things there. I think, you know, people can do a beta that has a time limit. So once we launch, this will no longer be free and you convert to a paying product. The other thing I've seen is, you know, I mean, I paid for Buffer, you know, while they were still developing the product. Like it was definitely not, you know, completely finished. And I think if you're passionate, you know, there are going to be some customers that are so passionate about the problem that you're fixing that they, you know, they're going to be excited to be kind of part of the building process, even while they're paying you. Oh, exactly. And like since Photojournal, I've worked on other projects where it's been that, like, you know, customers pleading, please let me give you money so that I can use this thing that you're talking about building, right? Like it's totally possible to have that relationship, which is a lot better because, I mean, if you're trying to build a business, that's how you validate it. You don't validate it because your beta users who you've given free accounts to say they like it. Yeah. Okay, so you launch in April 2010. What's the response? You send out your email.
What's the response? How many people did you have sign up?
Well, first, so it was pretty awesome. So it was like a Sunday night, and we were actually at John's dad's office. We had gone there for Sunday and like hauled our iMacs there, and we're working on it. And we packed up, and we were like, okay, like let's flip the switch. So we like flipped the switch. We're like, sweet, it's launched. High five, and then send out a quick message to our list, like, yeah, we launched, and pack up our computers, dust off our hands, and we're like, all right, now let's go home and like go to bed because it's like late.
Yeah.
And as we're like walking to the car, it's like our vehicles, it's like, oh, the site just got slammed with traffic and we're down. So we like bolted back inside, like with our huge iMacs, like unpacked them, set them all up, and like put out a few fires and stuff. But which is like, again, another like lesson. You want to like, just you don't want to launch on like a Sunday night when you're like, you want to go home and go to bed because things will break. But I mean, we had our first paying customers within, minutes of them being able to sign up and pay. So,
wow. Okay. Well, so you didn't have a trial plan. You just had people went straight to paying?
No, sorry. There was a 30-day trial, but I should say people were signing up for, like, at the time we had a free plan and then a $9 a month plan and a $16 a month plan.
Yeah.
And like right out of the gate, people were signing up for the paid plans, which I guess doesn't mean they necessarily were paying customers then. But I mean, at least, if somebody signs up for a paid trial, that's a lot different than a free plan because they at least have intent to pay if it's good and what they want, right? So like it was compelling enough that they were willing to consider paying that amount. And actually, though, no, now that I think of it, we did have some paying customers because at the time, and this is one thing I would say we did right, we offered a yearly plan. So I think we offered like 25% off if you paid for the whole year up front, which was good because, we were immediately cash flow positive because of that decision. So there's a few months, during development where we were paying $20 a month for our hosting, but we're on like a VPS. So we started off on the basic plan, which is $20 a month or whatever. And then at launch, I think we upgraded a few tiers just to be on the safe side. And we were able to do that without being out of pocket because of that yearly plan. So we reimbursed ourselves for what we had been paying out of pocket for our hosting costs. And then we also had cash going forward to pay for like the better hosting plans.
Yeah. When you say cash flow positive, you mean you're able to pay for your kind of fixed costs.
Right. So not necessarily like turning a profit. I mean, I guess it's hard for me. I actually don't really remember the numbers and I don't think we have them recorded anywhere, but yeah, like basically it was like no longer did we have to pay out of pocket, and we had some money that we could use towards like the things we wanted. For example, setting up our tender support site. I think it's $25 or $30 a month, and like suddenly we could do that, or we could pay for other services that we kind of wanted to use, but when you're in development, you don't want to pay for it. It's like, okay, now we've got some cash, we can actually pay for things that will help us run this machine better.
Yeah. So do you remember how many people kind of roughly out of your 300 to 500, how many people signed up for a free trial? How many people signed up for some sort of paying trial? And then, how many paying customers did you have, after the initial 30-day trial?
Right out of the gate. Let me see. I don't actually. And this is probably gets to, like I would say probably gets to like the point of like where I think my biggest weakness, like running a SaaS business, was, and still is to a large degree, is the importance of tracking and measuring that kind of stuff. We kind of, we launched it and we're like, well, we'll fiddle with the knobs and maybe our revenue will go up and maybe people will find us. And the whole idea of even, tracking how many people who sign up for trials lapse versus continue on to be paying customers. That's, to be honest, we've never actually set that up. It's always just been kind of going by gut reactions to the data we're seeing as it comes in. We'll be like, oh, this week we had a lot of people sign up for the pro account. And yeah. And that's kind of where I got left, right? There hasn't been any really following up on how many of those people are still active after a few months, or how many people are signing up for free trials versus the free plan, that sort of thing. So, the fact that you asked that question, which is a pretty legitimate question, and I'm unable to answer it, kind of shows how, without tracking and metrics and stuff like that, even basic stuff, you're basically operating in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any sense of, if you had 400 people on your launch list, do you have any sense of how many signed up for an account?
Let me see. I could actually, I can do a quick query here on our database. So in May of 2010, we had 138 signups.
138.
And, yeah, let me have a look here. Let me see if I go back a month. Oh, you know what? It must have been at the end of March that we launched. So, right, okay, start of April. So April is actually the month we launched. We had 241 signups in April.
So 241 signups in April on launch. And then the next month you had 138 signups. So you had hundreds of people using this right after you launched.
Yeah, and that's... So, we hadn't really done a great job of the actual marketing side of the product. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
In fact, the sales site was built, I think, the hour before we launched. It was like, oh, I guess we need some kind of thing at myphotojournal.com when they go to it so that they know to sign up. Because we were totally if we make this thing awesome, everyone's going to sign up and pay us money for it. And then we're like, yeah, we should flip the switch. It's I guess there should be something at our website telling them how to sign up. So It was literally slapped together. And it was like that for, I don't know, probably, well, actually just last year, February of 20, we made some incremental changes, but last February of 2012 is when I completely redesigned the sales site. So for when these people were hitting the site, it was not at all geared for conversion. It was pretty awful. In fact, well, I shouldn't say it was awful. The main thing that they saw was recent activity on the community. So a lot of people that I talked to were confused because they kind of thought it was an aggregator or something, or people thought that it was my blog, because when you went there, it was thumbnails and titles of all the blog posts that were happening on Photojournal, and then in the sidebar, it was want to create your own blog? Click here.
Yeah.
So, but even still, we had right off the bat a few hundred people using it. I think if we were to drive more traffic, if we would have been able to drive more traffic, maybe signups would have been higher. But yeah, so people are using it.
Yeah, people are trying it out. And and can you give us a sense, right now, two years later, what kind of and so how many paying customers do you have today?
Let me just look here. So without giving the exact number,
sure.
Let's say, I don't know, it's over 300, let's say.
Okay.
So.
Wow. So you've got yourself 300 paying customers now.
Yeah, that's roughly where things are at now.
And so where do you think you're going to go next?
Well, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. And I would say this is probably been the other biggest, I guess, obviously like photojournalism isn't this like explosive success. It's like it does grow modestly every month, and like it does make revenue and customers are happy, but it's never like really, you know, I never seen like that hockey stick growth. Not that I even expected it, but like, you know, it's not even to the point where it's paying somebody's full-time salary.
Yeah.
So like the frustrating part is, I'm like 100% confident that photojournal could be turned into a business that pays one person, at least one person's full-time salary, if not more. Like I would say in terms of like finding a market that's willing to pay, I think this has like done that. And every time we put more effort into it, we see a return on it. So it's kind of like this thing that's just waiting for some attention to like tweak it and turn it into a success, like a really successful online business.
Yeah, and it sounds like the product is solid. It's the marketing that you're thinking about right now. Exactly.
So like to give a bit of backstory, so photojournal has always kind of been like a side project for me and John, and we were like, we'll grow it on the side. We'll like spend some time fixing bugs, like blah blah blah. But it's really hard to gain, like, I guess, not even an exponential growth, but significant growth that way. Like it does grow a bit on its own, but it's like, I would say it's cumulative growth. Like it's slowly getting bigger.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, if you want to turn it into a business, like that's a long haul. Like that's not the way to do it. And it took us a while. Like it took a lot of learning to realize, okay, if we want to turn this into our primary gigs, like we've got to put a lot of effort into not just making the product better, but like the marketing side of it. And then everything that goes along with that, like blogging and running ad campaigns and learning about like, so not only like what I talked earlier about, like what a challenge it is tracking metrics. And I mean, that's still something I struggle with, like not just knowing what things to track, but what they mean and how to take action on those things. And technically, how do you track it? I mean, churn is a pretty good example where, you know, most people immediately think they understand what churn is. It's, you know, it's the number of cancellations over the number of, well, there's two ways, either the number of cancellations over the number of total users in a given period of time, or the number of canceled users divided by the number of new users in a period of time. But Shopify has a great post that's like how we calculate churn, and they go through like 5 or 6 fairly complicated examples of how they were calculating it and why it's wrong.
Yeah.
And because there's so many things you need to take into account, like is a lapsed trial, is that churn? What about when somebody goes to the free plan and just stops paying you? Like, is that churn? It's an incredibly complicated subject, and in some ways, tracking things and recording metrics incorrectly is worse than not recording anything at all.
Yeah.
For example, if you record churn wrong, and you're recording it as, like, say, a percentage of total users who are canceling, and your growth is constant, your churn rate is, because your overall user base is growing, but the number of users who are canceling is more or less constant, your churn rate is actually going to go down, right? Like,
gotcha,
month by month, your percentage is going to get lower and lower. And you might think, you know, pat on the back, we're decreasing churn. And it's like, no, that's just an artifact of the way you're calculating churn. So, which can lead you to make like bad assumptions
decisions
about what.
Yeah.
Exactly. You could be like, okay, we don't need to focus on retention because our churn is decreasing. When that's not, like, your problem is that if that's happening, the real reason that's happening is because your growth is constant. And that's the problem you should be solving. You should be figuring out, how can we get more users than we got last month?
That's right.
So there's all these lessons that, I mean, it's taken, you know, a year to like learn about all these different things that we need to do and figure out what to do with them. And so last summer, I decided to quit my job at Carbamade, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna like, now that I'm starting to get a handle on some of this stuff, I think I can turn it into a business. I think I've validated the market. We ran a survey which was like incredibly positive results, and it was just like super validating to hear people say like, oh, actually, I should read you one response here. We had a question that was, what alternative would you likely use if photojournal weren't available?
Yeah.
And it was like a bunch of fixed options, but we also had a free form. And one person wrote, I would weep openly in a corner on a pile of ashes. So, and
that's pretty good feedback.
Yeah. So it was positive. Like, a lot of the questions in this survey were based off of, I can't remember, maybe it was Jason Cohen posted on his blog, like a few questions to ask that'll really help you determine if you've got like a good product market fit. And one of them was, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product?
That's a good one.
Like, if you've got something like 40% or higher saying that they would be disappointed, then you've got a promising product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so in our survey, we had 108 respondents. And let me just add this up here. Out of that, 94 said they would be disappointed.
Wow.
And 57 of those said they would be very disappointed if they couldn't use photojournal. So, I mean, that's a pretty anecdotal way of measuring product market fit. But in any case, it kind of shows that there is something there that's probably like there's a nugget of a business there waiting to happen. So I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do a little bit of consulting on the side to pay the bills while I grow photojournal. And of course, in the middle of all that, I decided to try and start a font design workshop, which ended up me and my partner Jeff Archibald tried to. Well, we had a great conference, but that ate up 2 months of my life, and and then after a little while of consulting, I ended up coming aboard Granify full time. So, which is a whole other. I mean, I think we've maybe talked about that decision in the past, but so in a way, I was like, okay, I wanted to make a go of photojournal. Like, there's something there. Granify is kind of like a bigger opportunity for me, so it makes sense to focus on that. And I was, for a couple months after I started at Granify, my free time was basically spent finishing up all the contracting work that I had lined up earlier. And so it's only been in like the last, couple weeks actually that I haven't had additional freelance work hanging over my head in addition to what I'm doing at Granify. And I mean, Granify is still like my number one priority. Like it's far more valuable for me right now to spend my time working on and improving Granify. Yeah. But that being said, like I still want to do something with photojournal. So I spent the last couple of weeks like thinking hard about what I want to do with it going forward. And I think the first, the kind of the realization I came to was this, like, not being able to, like, not tracking metrics and being able to measure certain parts of the business were like the number one problem that I'm having with it. Like I said earlier, I'm basically operating it in the dark. So before I can even really decide what to do with it, I'm kind of just gonna kind of sit back and I started integrating Mixpanel, which I know I saw Amy Hoy tweet angrily about Mixpanel the other day, but I've got to say, like, it's actually really awesome so far. And I've just done like a light integration, and I'm going to add in some more things and bring in some more historical data, but I can answer all these questions that I've been unable to answer, such as like at what point does the revenue from a customer tend to start dropping off, or what proportion of new trials lapse after a given amount of time, and how is that changing? Like, are more people continuing on to paid customers now than they were 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And finding those drop-off points so that I can do things like figuring out when to send a lifecycle email and to who and what should it be about. And so Mixpanel is, I mean, I'm going from nothing, so maybe that's why it looks so awesome for me, but it's already providing a ton of actionable insight for me. So my plan right now is to kind of watch the dials for a little bit and maybe run some experiments, especially with email. I think that's the value of doing email correctly has really, that's something I totally didn't even think about until probably the last 6 months. I've started to really see the value that email can have, not just newsletters, but like the life cycle and retention emails.
Yeah.
So there's some low-hanging fruit that I'd like to address, and I'm curious to see like what some of this measurement stuff tells me, because then from there I'll kind of be able to gauge where to spend my efforts on next.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be interesting for us to maybe do another episode in about 6 months and just follow up on this and say, what happened? Because I think there is quite a few people that have started side projects, or maybe they have, a bunch of different side projects, or maybe they've just launched, their own SaaS app. And the truth is that it's kind of like slow, steady growth on a lot of these things. It would be interesting, I think, for folks to hear, what happened once you started tracking things, what became significant, and how did that end up affecting Photojournal as a business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's, I would love to hear. I'd love to hear more people talking about like the nuts and bolts of like what metrics they track and what. Part of the problem is that it's very easy to get sucked into vanity metrics and things that don't really matter. And Google Analytics is like famous for this, where it's just like, here's an overwhelming amount of information in some graphs, and like I think it takes you've got to be pretty savvy to look at Google Analytics and come away with an idea of what you should do next.
Yeah.
So filtering out all that noise is pretty difficult, and distilling it down to, I can't remember who it was, but I recently read a blog post where they were like, they would only track one metric, like they would look at one number, and that would be like kind of management would decide like whether it was retention or conversion or whatever it was. They would look at like one thing and just be like, we are going to blow this number out of the water over the next 3 months. We're going to raise it from this to this, and basically ignore everything else. It's like, we're just going to like put everything we've got into increasing this one number. And the more I kind of like learn about this kind of stuff, I think that's what you've got to do. Like, you've got to just figure out where the easiest problem is for you to solve, and then just like focus all your effort on that one thing. And then, I mean, you can't ignore everything else, but it's a lot easier than sort of shotgunning everything and not really being sure how effective each different strategy is. Like, that's just a recipe for burnout. So yeah, I think that's a good takeaway. I think that pretty much covers that. Like, one other thing I would quickly mention, like if anyone is thinking about doing some kind of, starting up a SaaS business, is just a quick note about like pricing. We kind of arbitrarily picked our prices, and one thing that I like, and we also started with a free plan, which we've since discontinued, and it hasn't affected. Actually, I shouldn't say that. It's positively affected our paying signups. So there's a lot of people who will just use something just because it's free.
Yeah.
And they don't make ideal customers because, Patrick McKenzie has talked about this in the past too, that your lower paying customers are usually the most work to support. And I can say that that's totally true.
Yeah.
Not all free users. It's kind of like, those old logic puzzles where it's like, some blurgs are zergs, but not all zergs are zorks type thing. It's kind of like, it's like that with free customers. It's like, most support is caused by free customers, but not all free customers are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, exactly.
That way. So I'm pretty happy with like that decision to no longer offer a free plan. I mean, you lose the opportunity to, like, part of the reason you have a freemium model is because you want to convince somebody to sign up for free, get them through the door, and then through different strategies try and upsell them on a paid account. But that's a lot of work. Like, that's a whole other beast where you've got to have like some machinery in place to keep them engaged and keep making the value of the product evident.
Yeah.
Based on my limited resources, it's kind of easier to just come right out and say, this is why photojournal solves your problems and this is how much it costs. It's like you're either in or you're out.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that affects how people perceive the value of what you're offering. We get a lot of complaints from free users saying, why don't I get more storage, or why don't I get unlimited storage on the free plan?
Yeah.
Like, basically, like, why, like, and angrily, like, why aren't you giving me more? Like, this is so dumb that it's not like I can't use it for free or whatever.
Yeah.
And get more. But I've never had a single paying customer tell me that it was too expensive. So
yeah, exactly.
Like, the people who pay for it, like, I think they're okay paying for it because to them it's worth $16 a month to not have a hosting account and have to worry about all this stuff. Like, they get it. And because of that, because it's more valuable to them, they treat you and the product differently, right? Like, you're doing them a favor, I guess, in a way, by letting them use it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and what about pricing itself? Like, do you guys feel like you maybe made a mistake in choosing the price points that you chose?
I flip-flop between this because like a lot of days I think that photojournals should be more. And I've kind of, I mean, I basically have the code ready to go that I just haven't actually put it out. That increases the prices and like keeps everyone who's currently on a paid plan, keeps them like grandfathered in at their current prices, just as an experiment to see how it goes.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like, there is a lot of competition in this. Well, not really with the blogging world, but like in the photography website kind of world, which is loosely what we get categorized as.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition, but there's also a huge number of photographers out there, and so like, it's almost like an infinite market. And so on the other days, I'm like, well, if it was like, $10 a month, like, and we just went for volume. Like, that's where I'm not sure if it's like, if photojournal is better as a low margin, high volume business or a high margin, low volume business.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to figure that kind of stuff out. So, I mean, I'd like to charge more and everything. I was part of a mentorship program this summer, and like, the first feedback I got was like, you need to raise your prices.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I'm going to consider doing here pretty quick. And I mean, if I were ever to launch another product, I would do it differently. I would think, what can I build that people will pay $50 a month for?
Yeah.
Like, I would start with a price point and then figure out how to like deliver that much value first rather than the other way around, because it's just, a lot more worth it to, like, every customer that you bring on, obviously you're making more money. So it's kind of more worth it to pursue if you've got like a minimum number. And I would set that minimum number at like $50, and probably that's why I would end up, if I do another product, it's like almost definitely going to be a business to business app, just because businesses are okay with $50 a month, whereas most consumers, $16 a month is like, well, that's getting up to almost $20 a month. Like,
yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Well, this has actually been really helpful, Kyle. I think, especially, there's some folks out there that are in this space where they have something they've started, and they might have just started it a couple weeks ago. They might have started it 2 years ago, but they're thinking, how do my metrics, or how does my world compare to what other people have done or are doing? So I think just having someone else to kind of, see what someone else has done and where they're at, and then also, maybe identify with like, what are the next steps? So
for sure,
if anyone out there has, feedback or even ideas, it'd be interesting if people have specific ideas for photojournal, to have them, tweet at Kyle Fox or at Product People TV, and or even email us. You can contact us through the website, and almost crowdsource some ideas for the next steps for photojournal. That'd be interesting.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I'm totally. I love talking about this stuff, obviously, because we do a podcast about it. So I love hearing ideas about my own product, or like if people have, like if you're building a similar product, like in the photo space or something like that, I'm more than happy to just like chat about it, or if you're thinking about building something, like for sure, I love talking about it. So hit me up.
Beauty. All right. Well, let's end it there. Thanks again, Kyle. And
you bet.
For everybody else, we'll see you guys next week. And thank you for being our listener. We really appreciate everyone that tunes in week after week, and all those people that have been sending us encouragement on Twitter. That's at Product People TV. Please go to www.sprint.ly and sign up for a free trial, and thank at Sprintly on Twitter. Don't want to miss a show? Make sure you subscribe. You can subscribe in iTunes or by going to our website, productpeople.tv. See you next time. Podcast hosting is provided by Transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.